A little bit of pressure after Hayes there. Not sure what the real reason for my topic is tonight, but it definitely stems from the work a few of us have been doing regarding change, rejuvenation, purpose of our church, what's our purpose, and what does the Lord really ask of us. I was asked a while back a question with regards to the church and Kylan School. Why do you do what you do? It's a great question, and the core root of this, I think, stems back to the topic I chose tonight. Why do we do it? This is my religion. When you look around the room tonight and the history and sacrifices people have made to establish this church around the world, and especially here in Westville, it's a great question. Why do we do it? I know I'm going to leave so many important people out. Please shout out names as you think of them. But I really think it's important to put a face to this society and intend to answer the question, why do we do it? You have to think back to the first families arriving in Durban, the Ridgeways and the Cockerells, many of their descendants here tonight, and what that generation established in Musgrave Road. The unquestioning commitment of the next generation. What an impact the whole Skuurman crew was. 7 dedicated children and their supportive husbands and wives. Serene, Adele, Warwick still supporting whenever they can. Malcolm and Prue, Donnie and Meryl, my mom and dad, John and Moira Frost, John and Una Alphick, the Mayer family, the Merson Davies, Gerald and Gay Waters, the Lester family, the Snoops, and many, many more. Wow, the Gillespies for sure, Dennis and Ulali. But I did say the whole Skuurman crew and their families. And their husbands and wives. Oh, Diana Brown. Wow, all critically dedicated to establishing what we have here in Westville. Then the next generation, in the late 80s and 90s, they called themselves the 30 Gs based on their fundraising target. The Browns, Pat and Alan Waters, the Drapers, the Fords, the Edmundses, the Vokers, the Mansfields, the Alphicks, the Kloppers, and all the Cockerells and their respective husbands and wives. Wow, what an impact this group had in establishing Kylan and keeping the church on track during that era. These families established a base for the likes of Jenny and myself, Hayden and Al, Brennan and Les, the Standages, Bern and Jane, Eric and Van, the Wassermans, the Josephs, the Shane and Alan, Angela. What a base the 30 Gs established for a group for us to keep the flame burning. I think of the amazing influence of people like John and Elise, Tyron and Wendy, Peter and Sue, Cheryl, and the families of Kylan and all they contribute to creating this amazing place. Look at the unbelievable commitments of so many years by Daphne and now Simone, Bridget, the list goes on. Then the next generation, just when we thought too many people had left this beautiful place, a new energy stepped up. The Micklewoods, the Houselmans, Sam and Dill, Brennan and Tal, the massive Draper, Peyton, Klutter crew. Wow, what could we do without them? Our new headmaster and Bursa and their respective husbands and wives, how they go so far beyond and demonstrate how it's so much more than a job to them. Sure, I know I shouldn't have done that, but because I'm sure I've left out plenty more. But my question, why do we do it? The question seems so relevant when you look at it like that. So what's at the core? Do other similar organizations have this across at least 6 generations? The support in terms of time, effort, finance is one thing. But the emotional commitment to me was what really stands out, the raw emotional commitment. In this organization, when things get tough, go wrong, seep out of our control, it seems to eat at our souls. Why is this? In an attempt to answer this, I'd like to give a brief overview as what is Justin Mansfield's religion, and in so doing, hopefully paints a picture of why I do it. We are all here to celebrate the new church's birthday, and that's at the core of possibly why I do it. Louis, my dad, and other new church scholars, please don't take the next part of the speech as new church doctrine. This is Justin Mansfield's version of how he sees his religion. And I'm sure over time this will mold into something more and more of what the Lord is really trying to teach me. But this is where I am right now. I had an amazing evening the other night with my 2 boys. After a braai, we sat staring up at the stars. The question of who is the Lord? Life after death, people on other planets, true marriage, our purpose on earth. How do we know it's true? Amongst other great topics came up. A brief overview of how I saw my beliefs came up, and this is how it went. In the beginning of everything for me is a fundamental picture of a supreme being. It all starts in the belief that there is something bigger than us. When I look around, see the incredible happenings in nature, human birth, the laws that govern how the world works, my answer is, how can there not be a supreme being? People will argue there's no scientific evidence in believing a God or any higher being. Part of the definition of science states, science is a systematic structured way of studying the natural world through observation, experimentation, and evidence-based reasoning. For me, evidence-based reasoning resonates in everything pointing to a higher being. Sure, there probably was a Big Bang. It had to start somehow. Evolution is definitely rational. But when was the soul or the human mind fully developed? For me, the idea of a superior being can only but make scientific sense. This could be a whole nother topic, but for me, the fundamentally starting point for me. So having established the idea of something way bigger than ourselves, what would that look like, and where does my belief system start to gain an understanding? One thing that's fundamental for me is you gain faith through understanding. So it all starts for me with the logical idea that there has to be a creator, something bigger than ourselves. If we were then created by a superior being, surely this being wouldn't have just dropped us on earth, left us to evolve, and give us no clear direction. Was there a rule book? Over the years, it's become clearer to me that this superior being's essential characteristic has to stem from love itself. That's another topic on its own. This point gives me even more reason to believe that an instruction manual would have to be out there. What loving parent would leave their children out to navigate a world with no help? I was born into this faith, but for a good part of the last 45 years have asked the question, does it make sense? Well, if there's an instruction book out there, what would it look like? In the new church, we are taught there have been essentially 6 churches since the start of mankind. To me, 6 sets of instruction booklets or guidance given. The first, the most ancient church, represented by Adam and Eve, the people of this time, the most ancient earthly civilization, had open communication with the Lord and the spiritual world, no real division between heaven and earth, and direct instruction from the Lord. To me, to imagine the most ancient and basic people, the first people ever created, the need for direct instruction from the Lord makes so much sense. As a basic people, what would they have had? No written word to base their decisions on. Open and direct instructions seem so logical and necessary. As these people then turn to self-love, as we all do over time, represented by the serpent in the Adam and Eve story, and away from the fundamental understanding of right and wrong, that church died, represented by the story of Noah and the flood. The ancient church was then formed. This church relied heavily on rituals left over by the most ancient church. They initially knew the representation of these rituals, what they stood for. This guided them to understand God, giving them the ability to choose right from wrong. We are taught that these people then also turned away, starting to worship the actual idols themselves. The rituals became everything, and the inner meaning of what they represented was slowly destroyed. Evidence of these churches still exists today. You can see the remnants of them in many ancient religions, with their idols and superstitious belief systems still being carried out today. This church ended, represented by the story and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Israelitish church came next. You can clearly see the instruction they got, given either directly or indirectly, such things as the 10 Commandments, or indirectly through visions people and prophets received. This church also had the written law. We are taught again over time that man twisted these truths and to suit themselves, eventually to a point where those born into the world now were not in a position to have any access to the real truth. The truth was now so obscure, the Lord himself had to come into the world to level the playing fields, as it were. The Christian church then started with the birth of Christ, all their instruction conveyed to us through the New Testament. As mankind evolved from the most ancient time, there's always been clear instruction giving freedom of choice to make informed decisions about right and wrong, and the ability to choose or to destroy conscience, to grow or to destroy conscience. As we all know, at the heart of everything, we are given free will to choose our own destiny. In each period of time, this free will eventually turn to an overwhelming destruction of the truth, and hence the need for a new revelation at each stage. So where are we today? Do we have a freedom to choose? Does the instruction manual of the Christian church leave us in enough freedom to make the right choices? I think Hayes' talk went to a long way to understand a little bit about that. Life's tough out there. Moral choices seem to be getting tougher each day. It used to be about abortion rights, free choice, capitalism, socialism, gay rights. Now the decisions on LGBT community, children choosing their own sex, fertility treatment giving rise to choosing the sex of your own child at fetus stage. Do churches marry 2 men or 2 women? The list goes on. So the Christian church has the Old and New Testament. What have we done with this? Did we divide God into 3? Have we twisted the truth to suit ourselves? So where does it put us? Going back to my question, why do we do it? When the Lord was on earth, he said he couldn't tell us everything. Mankind was not in a position where he could hear or understand more. But he said he would come again in a time where we could understand it. To me, given the confusion around the different revelations in the Old and New Testament, it only seemed logical that the written format in the writings would be this new instruction manual, given at a time when now, through the evolution of mankind, we can understand it. The one thing I say to my kids is, does it make sense? If it doesn't, you have to keep looking. Surely we are put on this earth to search for answers that will eventually bring us peace. This quote is fundamental to me. You as an individual don't get to decide on the rules that will determine your own happiness. Surely we are all looking for real peace and happiness. So where do those rules come from? We have been given such fundamental teachings. This lies at the core of why do I do it? What would I have done if I really questioned the Old and New teachings with so many anomalies and conflicting messages with no clear explanations? If that's all I had to work with, would I be sitting in any church? Where would my moral compass lie? Where would I go for the real answers in trying to navigate this vastly changing world? Questions around my purpose in this world, life after death, my role in marriage, why evil exists, the fact that heaven is a choice, as is hell, not a destination or some sort of right. The scary teaching in divine providence that states if we believe that a particular evil is permissible, they become part of us, even though we don't do them. Isn't it logical? If we believe something wrong is permissible, it becomes part of who we are, part of our core nature. So why do I do it? I do it in the fundamental belief that the Lord created us and now has given us teachings to truly understand. You can't get these teachings anywhere else. So many other things can support us, but he has handed us these 2 teachings that you can't get anywhere else. All the Lord wants to do is to create a heaven out of freedom from the human race. We have been given a complete instruction book. Malcolm did a sermon before he left stating, you have 1 generation to pass on what you know. 1 generation. If we don't, all we know and have been taught and understand will be lost. Lost to our children, lost to the people around us that we affect every day, lost to the future generations and the impact they would have. That's a crazy truth. Without an established new church, how do we pass on what we have? Think back to all those people listed in the beginning and everything they did to continue to do. Why do we do it? It's because we don't have a choice. We have to. Thank you.